Morning. I am Mrs. Romehill. I know Romehill. I am Rachel Pyock's mother, and I am Finnish. That's my nationality. And I'm going to this morning set some bread that is a Finnish bread. It's sometimes known as cardamom bread. We call it Nisu, N-I-S-U, Nisu. And Nisu is the name of it. And sometime in the course of this recipe, I'll call it pulla, and pulla is the Finnish word for a roll. So, all right, I have items out there, they aren't named, but you have the recipe. This is yeast. It calls for either 2 packages of yeast and a package of yeast is a scant tablespoon. So, and I don't have packages, but I get my yeast in a large container. So, there is my yeast. The first item you do is you put your yeast in. I do get my yeast out at night and other ingredients so they'll be a little bit warmer, at least at room temperature. And I add a small amount of sugar to assist in the raising. Oh, it's maybe a teaspoon, might be a little more than a teaspoon. Then I get a half a cup of hot water, and you don't have to, you don't warm it on the stove or anything. You just get a good hot water from the sink. A good hot water from the sink, and that we'll be proofing the yeast and making sure it's going to rise and giving it the liquid it needs. Okay, and that's the last I need of a half a cup. So, yeah. All right. We let that sit a minute to proof. That means it needs to raise a little bit. And you have a can of evaporated milk. I have already opened that. And then you need 4 eggs. I will go ahead and put that. We don't have a dish for the eggs. Now, I've just been told that this is just for family and friends, not for school. So that means I can keep my language. I can talk anywhere I want to in a clean language, which is a real important thing for me. Okay, 4 eggs, and I have had them out a little while. Eggs at room temperature seem to do better than a shell. Seem to do better than cold eggs as far as the raising is concerned. So come on, get out of there. All right, and I will beat them with a whisk. And Rachel has already melted the butter for me. Beating the eggs, and in case the butter is hot, just a little thing that I do, I put the eggs in the butter because that helps to cool it down a little bit, doesn't hurt the eggs any. That way, in case the butter is a little warmer than it should be. And then, if you want to look, you know enough about the yeast that it's bubbly in there. So it is showing that it is raising. It will raise what we need to have raised. Okay, and then I add, I do this sometimes too. So I add it all in here, and I do use a full can. A full can of evaporated milk is a tiny bit more than you need, but that's okay. Easier than measuring it. I've measured them. Okay, this will save. We save that kettle, excuse me, for melted margarine. I don't know what you do, if you melt it in the microwave or not. I do not. So.
Well, what we found is that melting it in the microwave does not work when you're brushing it over the pullas.
Oh, yeah, I don't.
For some reason, it doesn't. Yeah, so we always do it on the stove.
Okay, and I use my dough hook and get some of the things out of the way. I need salt, Rachel. Children. Rachel is delighted that she's possibly the only child. Okay, I add a cup of sugar. I want to make sure it's a cup. I want to make sure, as you know, girls, you're supposed to level it off. So there we go. I add a cup of sugar to this first. And then I begin to add the flour, and I do use bread flour. It has a higher protein and gluten level in it, so it does help, especially in a house that isn't exactly draft free, and our house is not. Okay, I'm going to add regular flour first. It calls for 7 to 8 cups. So I will add 4 cups of gold medal all-purpose flour. Gold medal people should give me a...
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a really good
ad.
Ad right there.
Now, I was hoping this was going viral, but there's enough of that viral stuff around so we don't... 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then I will add, this is bread flour. I've got 4 there now. I'm going to add 3. And I do, you know, all of you kids know that I keep my, so that's 1. I better do this so I don't forget and not realize what I've got out. 1, 2. So this is 7 cups of flour now. I'm going to do a half, maybe not quite half, because you can add it if this, and you'll know when it's mixing if you need more flour, because it's sticky. It should not be sticky. Soft and pliable. This is hard for me. As I get older, it's hard for me to get that envelope because it's heavy. Okay. Now, there are 2 other ingredients. Okay, so I've got the flour in now, and I can't fit my whole teaspoon in, so you add a teaspoon of salt. With any raised bread, you add salt. Any and every. Unless, of course, you're on a low salt diet. I don't know what you do. Anyway. Okay, then. Almost forgot. We didn't get our ingredients out last night ahead of time. Rachel got a couple of them, but normally I get everything out the night before because it takes about half an hour to gather all your things together, and at least it takes me that long. Okay, now I'm using, I have a little grinder here, and normally I would use 1 tablespoon, but I've been having trouble, so I'm using almost 2 tablespoons of cardamom because it smells so wonderful, but for some reason it isn't as, it's a different type of cardamom, I'm assuming, because there's many different types. There's fancy white, there's green, there's black, so I'm just gonna, I have a whatever kind of cardamom. Here we go, and I count to 35 usually when I do this. The original recipe calls for a teaspoon of cardamom. Have never done that. I don't think I ever did. I thought, what's this teaspoon about? So I get all the dust, and so this is 2 tablespoons. That's a lot. That's quite a bit different. And I guess it depends on you as to how much you have and whether or not you want it very cardamom-y, but
the stuff the cardamom that we buy at the store now doesn't have the same flavor as the cardamom we used to be able to get.
This is, and you've got some of mine. I've given you different. I sent some to Debbie. I mean to Kathy also. Okay, so it now, if you want to take a look at it, it now has 7.5 cups of flour and the liquid ingredients and the salt and the cardamom. And now, magic. Now, the only reason I'm doing the mixer, I've never used the mixer before. I normally make at least a double batch of Nisu, which will give me, almost 4 dozen rolls. But Daddy said I can't make it unless I use the mixer because he wants me to conserve my energy. So I can help him more. No. And if you can take a picture of this, and then it actually will do the job.
Come over here because you're going to see this part.
Now you can come over here and take a look. It's been mixing about 3 minutes. This machine can knead it, and I do let it do it, but it's a little hard on the machine. So you don't want the machine to get hot if you're using a machine. But I used to always do it by hand. As I told you, I'm not supposed to be doing it by hand as far as Daddy's concerned. But I do need it a little bit. I'm going to do this a little more. and it's a little bit sticky, a little bit stickier than I would like it. So I'm going to add just this, probably a tablespoon or two is all. There. I want you to look in here. It's picking up it has picked up the flour very well. If I haven't had enough flour in it, then you get a little pool of, not really a pool, but that's what it looks like, of dough. And look in there, you can see it's all pretty well picked up. If your house is warm, if you live in warm country, so you don't need, you have a warm place to raise it, you don't need to do this. But as I said, I have a lot of drafts in the house. I put the oven as low as it'll go, which is 170 for me, and then I will get it warm while I do the finished kneading, and then or American or English kneading. Anyway, it'll be warm, and I'll turn it off. And so the oven just stays warm while I do the work with the Nisu. Okay, so Rachel tells me, I said, I don't like my double chin. And she says, well, that's because I need to be filming up. I said, so get her a chair and do it. My word. Anyway, I'm about ready. It's been going for 6 or 7 minutes in the mixer. But then I take a bowl and I spray it with Pam and set it aside. This is where I'm going to work on it. Work on the Nisu some. And I have a little bit of flour. Put that chin up. Okay. Looks real good now, and I just don't like the machine to get too hot. So take it out, but that's a good dough. Alrighty, then I'm going to knead it for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Is all with my hands, and then put it to raise for the first raising. I just used 2 raisings. My mother used to do more than that. She did 2 raisings in the pan like this, but I have never...
Really?
Yep, but I've never felt it necessary. Because she didn't have bread flour.
Okay.
So, anyway, there's the dough. Looks real good. Yep. And I look at my clock, and yeah. So, and as an old lady, I sit down because it does tire me out. So, the whole process. So, I sit down. And I need to see, that's nice. It has give under your hands, and you can tell it's alive. More lively than me a good share of the time when I do it right. Okay, so I will knead it now for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'll put it in this pan, and I will cover it with saran wrap. I have a big roll, so it covers it nicely. And then I will put it in the oven. The oven is heated to 170, and all right, in order to have the Nisu light and airy, I know some people think we already did it in the mixer. Why do you need to do it now? All I know is in order to get good, airy Nisu, it needs to be kneaded 10 minutes. Some people say, oh, it doesn't really need, I can do it in 8. That's fine. That's fine. And if you're happy with what you get in 8, that's fine. I'm not happy with what I get in 8. So yeah. So as you can see it, that's so nice. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. Yep. So anyway, yeah, in just a minute I'll put it into the pan here, and probably right now is fine. I know Rachel's got to get on the plane. She and the family do. Okay, and you turn it so that it's greased on the top, and then you cover it completely with saran wrap. For probably an hour. I'm hoping it'll take less, but if it does take an hour, it takes an hour. This first raising, you want to take care of it and keep your eye on it so that if it raises too long in the first raising, then the Nisu is yeasty, and that's not, you can taste yeast as much as you can, the cardamom, you don't want that. So this first raising is important in that when it gets so it's doubled in portion, then take it out and make it into your Nisu pula. And yeah, okay. Okay, so the Nisu, I think it's just a cool thing to see and probably most of you don't have the large saran wrap, but it is wonderful because you get it in one piece. And okay, and there it is. There's the Nisu raised, very nicely raised, double, very nicely, very good quality. Here's my old pan. Mrs. Steen, bless her heart, helped me with those. Anyway, so now I cut it into, I normally do the whole thing. I won't do the whole thing now, but I normally do cut the whole thing in estimated, estimated size. I've done it so many, that's too big, but I'll change it when okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My pan will fit 12. I lost count already. It's just easier so you're not cutting. I normally cut the whole thing up anyway. Okay, so I melted some butter. You can use margarine or butter. If you don't have to use butter, we're using butter now. Rachel had brought some with her. Okay, so there's butter, melted butter here, and a little paintbrush that I painted on with, and then sugar goes on. Okay, so I take that piece and roll it out. And I do use gloves when I worked in Nisu. I think I've mentioned that before. Okay, and then I think you've all done this. My kids have at some point. And yeah, and you'll be able to tell if they get either too big or too small. But that really doesn't make any difference. It's the size you want them to be. And I can get, out of this batch, I will be able to get almost 2 dozen. Normally I get 23. Here's the pan of Nisu that has been rolled up, as you can see. And they look pretty small, but actually they will raise well. They will raise well. You just need to give them enough time to raise. Okay, so I'm painting them all with butter and a little paintbrush that I use only for this. I don't use it for the house. I just use my cooking paintbrush. I've used the silicone ones, but they splatter sometimes, so I go back and forth between. I prefer this only because it doesn't splatter. Don't get my double chin, Rachel. Okay, and then I will sugar it. And some people think I don't put enough. Bootson is very cute with it. She likes to dip it in sugar. And I do put a sufficient amount. It's okay if it goes on the pan. I mean, since it isn't a war where we're rationing sugar, I guess it doesn't hurt any. So we sugar it, and then it goes in to raise, and the oven will be, I didn't put it back up to 170, but you normally would have the oven warm, or wherever you're raising it needs to be warm. And covered, if you're raising it out of the oven, you don't have to cover it if you're raising it in the oven for the final raising. And this will be the final raising. And it'll take about an hour. Sometimes it takes a little more, but that's okay. It's not going to get yeasty at this point. The yeasty comes if the very first raising, if you raise it too long and you'll lose track of it. But this should be just fine, okay? So now it's gonna go in the oven.
So even for up to 2 hours of raising is okay?
I've never had to do 2. I've had to do 1 hour and 20 minutes. Well, it actually isn't gonna hurt if it's too cool, then it's not gonna hurt the yeast anyway. So it's slow, so I guess you just have to watch it. But you don't want it, you want to get it when it's, like these will be doubled, and they'll raise just a little bit more in the oven. So, okay, there's the first pan. You can come and look at it. And there's the finished product, my dears. Oh, you know what? This is the other pan before it goes in the oven. I'm sorry, I didn't take your picture. This is just, it's raised now, and it's going to go, this one's going to go in the oven. This one's already done. Enjoy it, people. Enjoy seeing that. Hope you learned something. Love you all.